Welcome back to the Social Web TV, and it is another big week for opening up the social web. We're going to skip over minor news stories and focus today on just one really big thing, and it's something that everyone here, including our two special guests, are directly involved in. Because just today, Plaxo and Google rolled out something called Hybrid, addressing some of the key issues of user experience for OpenID. And welcome our special guests from Google. We have Dirk Balfanz.
Hi. And
Breno de Medeiros.
Hello.
Welcome, guys.
All right. Thanks.
And this hybrid of OpenID and OAuth, which has been conceived of as a way of getting to a more consumer-friendly implementation and user experience for OpenID, is something that was actually written as a draft spec by 3 of the 4 people at the table. Not me. So who wants to introduce and explain what this hybrid thing is?
Maybe just kick it off for you guys, but when we think about the open stack and all of the stuff that we talk about, it's really that you as a user, if you're already using some websites and you want to go start checking out other websites, that you don't have to completely start over from scratch. Right? You can walk up to a new website and it already knows who you are, and if you've filled out a profile and you've already got friends and you're sharing photos or whatever it is, you shouldn't have to start over from that. And if you can do it right, it's going to be good for the user because they can more easily check out new things. It's going to be good for those new sites because they're going to have an easier time attracting new users and getting rich data. And it's going to be good for the sites that provide that data because that becomes a more valuable part of your identity and your experience all on the web. And so if you can really get the technology right and get the user experience right, there's this, I think, this magical effect that happens. And a lot of the technologies that have gone into what we've sort of come to know as the open stack all came at this same problem, but sort of from slightly different directions. So, OpenID, which these guys were also quite involved in at Google, was primarily this question of, how could a Google user come to Plaxo and say, hey, I really do have a Google account, and look, I can prove it to you. So that we could trust, okay, this person really is a Google user, we can use them. But that's just one piece. That's how do I know that you're from Google? Now that I know that, if you tell Plaxo, hey, I'm a Google user, what you normally think about is, oh, I'm already on Gmail, and I've got an email address, and maybe I've got a Gmail address book, or maybe I've got photos on Picasa, or it means a lot more to you than, hey, I can prove to you that I'm user 12345 in the Google database, right? And so OAuth separately came into this problem of how could I take some of my private data, like my Gmail address book or my Picasa photos, and share that over with Plaxo. And that is something that Google supports as well. But the two were separate. So there was no single fluent way for me to walk up to a site like Plaxo and say, hi, I'm a Google user, and I would like you to be able to take my address book and photos and do something interesting with them. Here you go. Each one was both technically and from what the user sees completely separate. And so it was just sort of the one last step to really make this fluent was to put them all together in one fell swoop. And that's what we managed to do with Hybrid. Do you guys justice, you think?
Yeah, I think so. From our point of view, Google, what we like to do is we like to make the web, useful for people. And Plaxo provides a great service for users, with all these sophisticated sharing methods that you have and so forth. And on Google, we have quite a bit of data that users might want to put, into Plaxo to use the kind of service that you have. And to make it easy for users to put these two things together and sort of just create a service that they want from over here and from over here and put it together, that's a useful thing to have. And the hybrid protocol that we have launched today makes it easier for users to do that.
And in fact, when I think about it, sort of from a user experience and product side, the technologies that are underneath the hood, very cool, great to see that progress, but in a lot of ways, the make this work for the user is to have that stuff go under the hood. And so what's really exciting about what we rolled out today for me is what we're referring to as a two-click sign-up. And in that two-click sign-up, there's a number of things that one might traditionally associate with OpenID, like asking someone for a URL, or in some cases showing them a list of different providers that they might choose from. We found that we were able to skip over all of that stuff in what we're calling a Google optimized onboarding, because one of the magical things with the social web, there's so much of interoperability. In this case, a new user, a potential new user, is invited to join Plaxo, and that invitation is going via Gmail. Well, we're trying to be smart about that now in what we rolled out today and say, well, of course, what we know about that user then is that they're a Google user, and at the time that they may choose to respond to that invitation, they're signed into Google. So we're able to say, here's an optimized landing page, and from that landing page, joining Plaxo is literally 2 clicks. The first click is on the landing page, and what happens next? Who wants to?
Going off to your consent.
Oh, over on our side. So yeah, what you see on the Google consent page is basically an explanation that says you're about to sign in to Plaxo, and what kind of information Plaxo is requesting access to, what kind of your Google data Plaxo is requesting access to, and in this case, it's just your address book, and so you say that sounds fine to me, and then you get bounced back over to Plaxo, and then what happens there?
Joseph.
And then behind the scenes, we've gotten a OpenID assertion from Google saying, yes, this person really is Joseph on Plaxo. And there's a whole way you can make little extensions that ride on top of OpenID. And we've done that in the past for sharing sort of simple profile data and things like that. But the magic of hybrid is that one of those extensions is to say, oh, could I also get an OAuth token that would let me have access to the user's address book or photos or what have you? And so they send us back that little token, and we on the behind the scenes can then exchange it and start to get all that data. But to the user, there was just that single page where they only had to authorize once, and they see a full list. That's the nice thing, is they know exactly what they're getting themselves into. They sort of say, okay, we want your email address, we want your address book, we don't need your calendar, whatever it is. And in their mind, they can just kind of make up their mode once rather than having to do it sort of piecemeal, right?
Now, this is not something that anyone who's thinking this sounds interesting can just walk up and try. It's actually, at this stage of the game, still an experiment, and it's for a subset of invites going to Gmail users.
Although we do have screenshots up on our blog and on TechCrunch and so forth, we can link that up.
And it's a very explicit experiment on our part where it fits into this goal of eventually trying to get an OpenStack onboarding that is strictly better than regular registration. And by strictly better, I mean across really 3 constituencies: the user, the identity provider site, and Plaxo. And so we're actually going to be looking really hard at the numbers and trying to figure out, is this in fact good for users, good for us, and good for Google? So
I can imagine one of the angles that you guys originally came at this from is, right now there's this very common practice, as Chris Messina is a very advocate of getting rid of the password anti-pattern, where people ask for your Google password on other sites. And it's obviously got a lot of security problems, and it's also hard to make it work well because there's scraping, it's not good APIs and so forth. And so by saying here you can have OAuth or what have you, you're trying to make it so that there's a safe way of doing it. The problem is if a site says, well, gee, today I'm taking passwords, but if tomorrow I swap it out and put in this open way of doing it, and my numbers tank because it's too convoluted or too confusing, how am I supposed to tell my boss that I want to make this change, which is going to hurt our company's growth? And so it's a much easier sell to make, to say not only are there these security benefits, but by the way, it's also going to make your users happier and give you more growth. Then it becomes like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the frustration I think that some of the big providers have had, that they've provided these alternatives, whether it's proprietary things like BBAuth or LiveID, DellAuth, or things like OAuth, which at least it's one you can write anywhere. But even so, it's not enough if it can't really make the numbers better, so there's still a lot of scrapers. And this may finally, I think this is going to be, if not a historic day, at least a good milestone along this path towards really moving into the open space where it is not only technically better, but better for business.
Yeah, I was going to say that OpenID I think is an exciting technology, but it has been struggling in the past a little bit with user experience angle. And so we've been working for the past maybe year or so at testing a bunch of things to make it a better user experience, to go through an OpenID flow using OpenID as the technology. But from a user experience point of view, the flow we were just describing a minute ago doesn't mention OpenID URLs or anything like that. So the users might not even be aware that the technology they're using here is OpenID. And so we've been trying to come up with user experience that are sort of smoother than traditionally maybe OpenID has provided. And we probably haven't seen the end of that process yet. I think we might see more evolutions of this to make it really smooth and a really good experience for the user.
Yeah. One thing that I think is interesting too, we've talked about it before, is this OpenStack movement is in a lot of ways also about anyone can contribute to it, anyone can add to it, and a lot of the benefit is going to come as different companies work together. And so I know this is an interesting project too, because you guys were all burning the midnight oil trying to get this stuff working. So
Many nights of late IMs back and forth, right?
Yeah, I can remember several times when I met with Joseph and with Dirk and I, and we had a few beers and we redo the entire spec and we think we got it now. And then we put it out there and we get some feedback from our colleagues and okay, it's not there yet. Back to the drawing board. So one of the great things about doing something in the open source is that you get so much feedback and the result is better.
Actually, the way I met you guys, as you recall, is this idea that OpenID and OAuth should come together, I think was out there for maybe a year or more. And David Recordon and I actually at one point took a quick swag at a sort of draft, sort of the predecessor of what this stuff was as a hybrid thing. But it was really just the simplest kind of like slam them together and hope for the best. And then I heard that there are these Google guys who said that Google is a very high performance company and users demand speed and there's no way that this is fast enough just to put it together. We're going to put them together in a much more sophisticated way that squeezes out a lot more efficiency. And that was really your first came in and it's like, oh, okay, these guys are really looking at it. And you had a whole bunch of different ideas about how to put them together in a way that squeezes out extra superfluous round trips and things like that.
Right. Trying to take away pieces and see whether what's left still does what we want to do.
And still keep it simple enough. So
Well-
that was a valuable angle of not just having different people on it, but each one with their own experiences. They were saying things we'd never heard of before, like, okay, but we've got data centers across the world, and you're going to get one hit here and one hit over there, and how are they supposed to talk to each other that fast? And us little guys were like, oh, it was all the same computer to us, so we didn't think about that, right? So that's how you really make progress.
And of course, it's great that I think this is going to do some good stuff for Plaxo and for Google, but really the bigger picture here is doing good stuff for the web. And my understanding is the code that you've developed for this is open source.
Yeah.
And I think on the Google blog post, there's a link to get it, so
Yes.
others are welcome and encouraged to play with this stuff too.
Yeah, we put up a project on googlecode.com. It's called step2.googlecode.com, I guess. If you go to googlecode.com and just sort of search for step 2, it should come up. Right now we have a Java implementation and we're looking for contributors for other languages that implement this protocol.
Now, one common perception that I think we'll see out there that I think would be helpful for us to nip in the bud is that what we did today and have been working on and are going to keep working on is somehow directly competitive with Facebook Connect. And I think the reality is a bit more nuanced than that. Yes, Facebook Connect is a different methodology of enabling third-party login to sites, but we're all trying to move toward this new model where instead of always registering for a new website through this painful dance of password and uploading your photo and just doing the same things over and over again, we make it as simple as 2 clicks to join a site. And Facebook Connect is actually doing great stuff for inspiring us to improve the user experience of the OpenStack. And quite frankly, what we did today with Google, you just couldn't do it with Facebook Connect because that's not what it's designed for. Facebook Connect is for enabling you to take your friends with you across the web and to enable great interoperability scenarios between Facebook and other sites of the web. But this is about how do we enable a great interoperability between Google and Plaxo and develop a common code base that can be used for any pairwise interoperability around the web.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting to have a tight partnership between 2 companies to make something like this work, the first time. And so, having, it's been, I think, kind of almost a luxury I've taken for granted to have people at a company as big as Google still staying up late nights and patching code and figuring out how to make this stuff work and iterating and measuring. That kind of feedback loop is essential. But what's cool is that the work we've done, you'll be able to turn around and use it with other sites with almost no work, and we'll be able to turn around and use it with other sites with almost no work, and that's great for everybody, right? Yep. So it's really neat to be able to have that best of both worlds of a tight integration plus a real base for reuse.
Yeah, and the OpenStack is still evolving, right? I think it'll be a good year.
Yeah. Now, one additional thing that we talked about is hybrid OpenID OAuth. It's actually a little more complex and elegant than that. It's really kind of 3 in 1. It's OpenID OAuth and the Google Contacts API all working in close concert. And we could certainly imagine that third piece being done with portable contacts down the road. And I think we'll see as we extend this 2-click sign-up initiative to work with other webmail providers, social networks, and try and prove this out. We're going to see more of these that are full OpenStack. So
you don't have to imagine that hard since we demoed it at the OpenStack meetup in December.
Yes, yes. With Google. Well, this is exciting stuff. I think this, as Joseph said, is actually an historic day. There's a lot more to come in terms of getting results, rapidly iterating on those results, sharing them with you. But as always, you can tune here to find out what's going on in this fast-moving space. So please make sure that you do join us next week for another exciting episode of the Social Web TV!